Okay. So, how many of you are familiar with the concept of augmented reality? Okay, good show of hands, actually, really good show of hands. So you will adore this next panel then, because we're going to talk about virtual reality, augmented reality, and everything in between. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for your panelists.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming on this Saturday morning. So I'm Norman Chan. I run editorial for a website called tested.com. We have a YouTube channel and we work with Adam Savage. And one of the things we do is we also put out a regular show about virtual reality technology and augmented reality technology. We've been following the rise of this tech for the past almost 9 years now. And it's really exciting, and I'm really excited to have this panel of awesome people with me today to talk about where we are and the things they're working on. But before we get started, I guess I wanted to get a sense of how many people out here have a VR headset or have used VR. It's pretty good. Awesome. That's really good. And how many of you saw the movie Ready Player One? About the same number, yeah. So some of this will be going over things that you might be familiar with, but I really want to start in case people don't know where VR is right now, or maybe saw the movie Ready Player One and were wondering how close or how far are we away from this world where people can buy a headset, put it on, and enter a completely different universe, a metaverse, a whole multitude of universes, where they can become anyone they want to be, they can do anything they want, and it's almost like a different layer of reality. And I think we're both closer than a lot of people think we are, but also there are a lot of steps to get us there. But to start things off, I just pulled up some screenshots from the movie. So this is the main character of Ready Player One. You guys saw the film, Wade Watson. Of course, the most iconic thing of VR, when you think of VR, is you think of the headset, right? You think of what is it that you wear, and how do you interact with that world? And the headset he's wearing right now is clearly it's a movie prop. And the headsets that we have, well, at least about 7 years ago, look more like this. And this is a photo of my old co-founder of Tested, Will, and wearing the very first Oculus Developer Kit 1. This came out in, I believe, 2012 after a very successful Kickstarter, and even before the company was bought by Facebook. And it was like a world-changing thing. You guys use it as well? Yeah. In fact, actually, let me introduce you first. So, actually, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
My name is Darshan. I'm the founder and CEO of Bigscreen. We're a virtual reality company that builds what's probably best understood as a virtual reality movie theater. So it's available on most of the major VR headsets on the market today, and it's a social cross-platform experience. So you could hop into a headset, join a room, and watch movies or videos, YouTube, Twitch, etc. 3D movies even, with people around the world in what feels like a movie theater.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. I'm Chief of Staff at Penrose Studios. We've been around for 4 or 5 years now, based in San Francisco. We're well known for putting out cinematic VR shorts, so very much short films. Have a couple pieces out. Element, Rose and I, Artist Wake, have been pleased to work with artists like Alicia Vikander on some of these pieces, and it's available on platforms like the Oculus Quest, PSVR, and a variety of other areas.
Hi, I'm Euan Macdonald, CEO and co-founder of DreamView Studios. We're about 2 years old. We focus on creating virtual products for e-commerce, which means basically instead of going and doing photo shoots with traditional lighting, sets, etc., which can be very expensive, there's a growing trend, particularly amongst e-commerce, to have as many pictures as possible. It's all been generated in CGI. That means creating a CG version of the product, and then potentially a lifestyle scene where the entire room is completely virtual. And this is also then used, the same object is then modified to be used for augmented reality. So the whole ambience in the room has to be generated by somebody. That's essentially what my company focuses on.
Hi, I'm Ed. I'm the CEO and founder of Avegant. So at Avegant, we create leading-edge display technologies that go into products like this. We really focus a lot on augmented reality, next-generation augmented reality displays, and really want to help our the product ecosystem create new types of experiences that just really aren't possible yet. So it's really exciting to see a lot of the things that are going on in VR, but I think the next couple of years are going to be really exciting for wearable AR devices.
Very cool. And a lot of what we're going to talk about touches on everything you guys work on, actually. So this headset, really, it was like $400 on Kickstarter, and you plugged it into your computer. It basically is like a smartphone display that you were strapping to your head with some sensors that allowed it to let the computer know when you were moving your head around. But it was like a groundbreaking thing for consumers. And if we jump forward to 2019, the headsets now look like this. Does anyone use an Oculus Quest? Yeah, so form factor wise, it may not look a lot different than what came out 7 years ago, but this is generations ahead. It's self-contained, everything, all the computer power is on here. You can run basically all the software that you guys make on this device, and it is $400 and available now. And if you've seen videos of people who play games like Beat Saber, that's all running natively off this device. There's also desktop high-end VR on things like the Valve Index. Again, the form factor of this, if you look at what Steven Spielberg did with Ready Player One, you're still wearing these goggles, but the technology that's behind these lenses and packing these goggles is rapidly changing. And then, of course, the interactions, right? So in Ready Player One, you see Ray Watts, he puts on these gloves, and when you think of VR and how it's been portrayed in popular media, you see people wearing gloves, and that gives you the sense of like your hand in a virtual space. And we have that now too in the world with controllers. So these are Oculus touch controllers, and you put your hand on them, and basically they allow you to see your hand in virtual space and hold things and grab things and push buttons. So whereas before, if you were playing a video game and you're holding a traditional gamepad, you're pressing A to grab something, in virtual reality, you actually are reaching out and grabbing something and holding a virtual object. And that's exactly what we have here. And then also haptic suits, right? In VR, one of the big things we see are sense of touch. Like how do you feel the things that you see in virtual reality? And in the movie, he buys this suit he puts on, and when people touch him, he can feel it. And that's a really difficult problem. I think we're not quite there yet, but there are technologies out there that try to give you a sense of haptic feedback and more than just vibrations. There's a company called Haptics who's working on these gloves that have tiny little tactile bumps on your fingertips. So when you grab something, you actually feel that the object that you're grabbing changes as soon as you touch it and move away from it. And then one, I think, really funny thing we see in the film is he in his van, he jumps on this omnidirectional treadmill where he can actually run around, and it addresses the idea of moving around in VR. If you're going to be in some type of virtual space and you want to get from this side of the room to the end of the room, right? You think about the holodeck in Star Trek. The story is that there was always a kind of a treadmill underneath you. Is that a real thing? Well, it turns out that when they made this film, they actually reached out to a real company called Infinideck, and that treadmill he's running on is a real prototype of a treadmill that's being worked on. It's, again, not quite there, but the idea and the technology and the research is being done to get us slowly there. But then that's the hardware, and the stuff that we have now is really compelling. We're still, I think, many years away from what the characters in Ready Player One are wearing, but I think what I want to talk about a lot more, what these guys are going to talk about is the content and the experience. And related to that, in the film, I don't even remember, but the characters, they go into this museum and they watch like a scene from the past, right? They are the characters in the front are avatars of real people in the VR space, and they're watching a scene, and that's kind of what Bigscreen, Darshan, it's kind of what you do, right? That's kind of what Bigscreen does. So talk a little about what Bigscreen does and what the experience is like when people share content with each other in the VR space.
So the Bigscreen is now about 4 or 5 years old, and the thought process behind what we do at Bigscreen is how is VR and AR, how are we going to change, how is it going to affect how we consume things that we already consume today on the screens we use every day? So how will it change movie theaters, TV screens, and our normal screens in our lives. How do we watch movies in the future, TV shows in the future, etc. And VR and lightweight goggles like this in the future, we believe, will replace a lot of the screens that we have, or at least give us capabilities that the physical screens in our real world don't have. To give us a movie theater-like experience from the comfort of our homes or wherever we might be. But to also enable us to hang out with and spend time with watching a movie or TV show with people that aren't even in the same country or the same area that we're in, allowing us to have a movie night with friends and loved ones that are on the other side of the planet, traveling for work or whatever it might be, getting to hang out with friends that you haven't seen in a long time. Being able to visit a movie theater and watch a theatrical release is something that is certainly fun in the real world, and we want to bring that into the virtual world. But we also want to, and what you see here is a screenshot of Bigscreen right now. These are a bunch of avatars sitting around in a virtual living room. People are on multiple different VR headsets, like the Oculus Quest or the HTC Vive or Windows Mixed Reality headsets, and you get to watch a piece of content that everybody loves together. None of them are in the same room, none of them are physically together, but virtually they get to spend time watching something on a really big screen together, that social experience of co-watching content. So we think that in the future, in a few years, we'll be able to bring movies that are traditionally shown first in theaters. We'd be able to bring them into VR and AR headsets to be viewed right at home the same day as they might be available in a theater. But more than that, you'd be able to watch it with people that aren't able to be there right then and there. We want to bring back even older movies like Titanic or Top Gun, movies like Star Trek that aren't necessarily in a theater right now today, and to bring it, to give it a theatrical viewing experience, as opposed to just watching it on a TV with people that live in the same city as you. But we also want to take that one step further, which is there's not only so much you can do in a physical movie theater in terms of designing it for the movie experience. When you're watching Star Trek, it's in the same theater as when you're watching Titanic. But wouldn't it be cool if we're able to create a virtual world to watch Star Trek in? The exact same Star Trek. We're not converting the movie into a different format or suddenly putting you inside the movie, at least not yet. But what would be the ideal movie watching world when you are watching Star Trek? Are you on the Enterprise? Are you in space? Are you on the moon? Where are you? And that's where there's unlimited potential for what we could do with filmmakers and directors to impact the theatrical movie watching experience.
I think something that you're really emphasizing is the social aspect. And I think a lot of people, maybe they don't realize it, when they go to a movie theater, even though you're kind of isolated and you're watching a screen, you're not talking to people next to you, it is fundamentally a social experience. And the laughs that people share, and the energy that's in a room, like the software that you're making tries to bring that into the virtual space. So like, for example, when you have a virtual cinema, but like if you have a dozen people in a room, what happens when people are watching a movie together? Are they behaving like they would in a theater?
It totally depends on the type of movie or the type of content. If it's something like a Twitch esports tournament, or if it's a movie that's really impactful, sometimes it's a little rowdy. Everybody wants to throw stuff at the screen and have a good time. Otherwise, everyone's kind of quiet. We did a screening of a famous TV show, and as soon as everyone comes into the lobby, into the cinema, everyone just does that quick kind of head nod, like, hey, like, but everyone's really quiet, respectful of the content. And after the showing, there's a virtual lobby gathering area as well, where people are hanging out, chatting about what that was like. It's a unique way to meet people that are interested in that specific title that you might not be able to meet in the real world at that moment.
Or even people who you know, right? Because people can create their own rooms. I think you guys have probably done the thing where you want to watch Netflix with a friend, and you're on the phone, and you see everyone press play at the same time, right? This allows you to do that, but you're all there next to each other on a virtual couch around a campfire and chatting each other. We find that experience extremely, extremely powerful, even if we're not focused on the content. A lot of people, right now, if you watch video games on Twitch, the most activity isn't necessarily following what's on the screen, it's in the chat. It's in the social aspect. And so, my friends and I would jump on and load something up like Bigscreen, put something on Twitch on, and then we're mostly just hanging out with each other. And we're making videos, because we have tools to put little cameras, and we actually recorded at one point like a 2-hour podcast in Bigscreen in VR. So it's a free application.
Yep, it's completely free.
Super, super cool. Going back to Ready Player One, one of my favorite parts of the film, it's in the book in numerous places, but the characters get to actually go inside the film. So Ernie Klein, who wrote the book, had this idea that in the metaverse, in VR, people who are fans of films would get to live out and basically be in the worlds of their film and partake and interact. And something like that is actually happening right now with VR filmmaking. And Penrose Studios and Evelyn, the company you work for, you're making narrative films with VR tools and for VR. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're focused on both AR and VR experiences, and I think when you think about VR filmmaking, what really comes to mind is that it is incredibly kind of powerful technology because it really speaks to kind of the human subconscious, like in a way beyond kind of what we've seen with other places before, and kind of going from opera to film to where we are now on flat screen. There's automatically kind of this divide when you're watching those pieces, but when you're in VR, it really just kind of speaks to just natural instinct, and we call it presence, where when you're there, you really feel like you're there. Even if mentally you know you're in this kind of virtual space, but it really has a way of just kind of tricking your body into feeling that you're like actually in those kind of experiences. So I think that was one of the big things that we've been finding as we've been doing through our pieces, is that you really can't take just what works for filmmaking or for flat screen and just put it in VR, because you'll really not utilize kind of the full power of the medium. And there's just a lot of little tricks that don't work anymore. Like a great example of that is like for action films, today you see a lot of cuts, and a lot of the cuts go really fast. And if you do that in VR, as I'm sure since a lot of you have devices as well, you just make a lot of people motion sick. So there are a lot of those kind of things that filmmakers today, as you're starting to look into VR as an entertainment technology and a medium, is really just kind of reinventing like how we're doing storytelling, how we're kind of keeping that human aspect, and really respecting, I think, the power of the medium, which is that every user is an active part of that piece. And it's really a new way of thinking, not just of the content that you're making, but also as well of how do you kind of respect the audience and bring them into your piece and really have that interaction. Because I think the best part for me watching someone go through a VR experience is when they naturally start to reach out. Like you want to touch it, you want to interact with it. And those are, I think, the moments that are really special in this kind of new medium.
And that's also the thing that everyone's experience may be different, as opposed to someone making a short film or filming a traditional 2-hour film. That frame is going to be the same for everyone. And obviously, they'll experience it emotionally maybe in different ways, but when you're making a VR film, you have no control over that. Part of the way sometimes I explain it's almost akin to a play, or is that how you think of it as well?
Yeah, in some ways we really do think of VR as almost taking more from plays, because you really have to think about the staging of everything. You should assume that people are going to walk around. If you want to have them focus on certain story points, you need to figure out what kind of cues to do for that. And things like audio, like spatial audio, things like that are really powerful to do that. But it's really how do you find a way for people to intuitively be part of that technology, and kind of take it as an evolution of everything that we've done in storytelling and take that into VR and AR.
And the barrier between the world and the story and the viewer kind of goes away, so you find those stronger connections and emotional responses.
Yeah, it definitely is really, it's a much more emotional experience in a lot of ways, especially if you think about how you do like action scenes or putting someone into that space. There's also very much a sense of when you're actually there, you have to be really careful about kind of the boundaries. And it's also actually in some ways thinking about kind of the ethics of what you're making as well. Like, what does it feel like to put someone in like a battleground scene? And what kind of things are you triggering? So there's really a lot of questions that it brings up that are really interesting from a very human level as well.
Can you talk a little bit about the films that you guys have put out?
Yeah, so these are some of our pieces that are out right now. So our first one was The Rose and I, which is a short piece about 5 minutes long, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. And I think what we were really trying to do with this is really encourage people to walk around. It's usually when people first put on a VR experience and first do a narrative piece, they just kind of stand there, because that's what you're used to doing with flat screen. But the beauty of this piece is kind of it makes you walk around the planet and actually realize that you can see kind of different Easter eggs and things like that. And then we have Augmented, which came out recently after that, which is about kind of a beautiful like Venetian world in the clouds type of thing. And then recently for Arden's Wait, which is a young girl kind of figuring out primarily in this kind of post-apocalyptic underground or undersea kind of world.
And all these are very artistic, and the look of them, there's a lot of pedigree and CG. Filmmaking, you guys aren't going for photoreal, you guys are going for there's a look to the film.
Yeah, there's definitely a look to it. There's definitely kind of an art style to it. I think a lot of people today still mostly experience VR, at least interactive content, mostly in games. And we really want to kind of bring out the sense that you can do a narrative. The technology is still a little behind, I think, for full photoreal. There's still a little bit of an uncanny valley kind of feel for that, but really kind of bring out the beauty of the animation and having that be a part of the story.
And that's something I think that's really powerful for both big screen and also for VR and shorts, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be photoreal for you to believe and to really connect with an avatar or a character, because as long as your brain, you see eyes and you see emotion, it's why when we watch Pixar films, we still feel like we connect to those characters, even though those aren't photoreal either. But in the photoreal world, that stuff is also being worked on, and I'm going to go back to Ready Player One again. A really funny scene, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but the villain in Ready Player One gets confused at one point. He's tricked into believing that he's in his office, but he's actually in just a virtual representation of his office. He's still in VR. How many layers deep can you go? Virtual worlds have to be built. When I was watching it, I was like, okay, the kids that tricked him and put him in his office, they had to actually create those assets. And it made me think, what company is actually doing that right now? And so you and your company, DreamView, you guys make the real world into the virtual world.
Correct. Yeah. So this image is completely CG, as like every object in it is like a product, and the room itself is also computer generated. So it's not like we just superimpose things in a real room. Like I said before, the advantage of doing that is the flexibility that a retailer and a manufacturer has, since they have more representations of the product. So we're working with companies like Amazon, Wayfair, Overstock. What we're getting is that the more representations they have of the product, as the more images, the more likelihood somebody's going to actually buy it. And this extends not just for pictures, but also then to have like an augmented reality representation, so you can actually then see it superimposed in your space. But ultimately, then having do this process, because everybody from manufacturers to retailers much more better representation and control over how the product's being viewed and visualized, and it doesn't then have to be limited in reality. So this is a very traditional type of shoot, but we've got some clients that are interested in having mattresses be shown at the top of mountains. It's not the sort of thing you just go and get a helicopter. You could, but it'd be extremely expensive. So the ability to do things which are hyper real and seemingly real is going to bring about a new, unique way of doing things at a very not a cost prohibitive way. Previously, this used to be thousands of dollars per product. Now it's hundreds of dollars.
I think a lot of people might be familiar with, IKEA or Amazon have AR apps that let you place a sofa or appliance in your house and see exactly how it fits. It's powerful, but the thing and these are exactly the kind of assets you're talking about, the models that your company creates. But I didn't realize that when you flip through a physical catalog, you go on the website, most of that stuff is also basically fake. It's digital.
It's starting to get there. Maybe there's millions and millions of products out there. We're focusing on furniture and furnishings first, and that's being driven by IKEA's been doing this for 8 years, really at the forefront, and other companies like Wayfair are kind of catching up. But there's still a lot of product to be generated, and it's across the not just furniture. There's watches, there's shoes that are superimposed using the AR app on your feet, and wrists, etc. So it's going to be an exploding market, mainly because it helps people visualize product before they buy it.
I mean, these are assets I would love to put in a metaverse, right? You don't want to be outdated and just go on a retailer's website and go away forever.
Well, exactly. So that's another part of what we're doing as a company is as we build this library of assets that, again, traditionally suppliers are know the concept of digital rights management in terms of copyright, but when it comes to actual product, having rights management for a 3D asset, which can then be considered, for example, any movie that's whether it's a set or a virtual set, you need to build all that stuff from scratch every single time. So So having a digital library and be able to like license that out, have like license control is another part like the services that Microsoft is focusing on.
It almost makes me think about the movie 2001 was very groundbreaking back in the day because it was one of the first films that had real products and real companies in there and legitimized that world that they were building. And when I go into a virtual space, I can see the very real products and the very real. I want that as opposed to just an artist's representation of it. I want to feel like that is the exact same thing that I will experience. And makes it more like a reality. And then as we get on to past virtual reality, what is the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality? And Ed here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because you run a company that is working on augmented reality technology. And I want to get a sense from you, tell these people understand why is that difficult? Why is AR harder than VR?
I don't think we have time to talk about why it's so difficult. But I think, all the challenges we see in VR today with field of view and resolution and size and weight and power and all those things, all of those challenges also exist in AR, except now we have to make them look like a pair of glasses. And they have to be transparent, and they have to be inexpensive and lighter and thinner. And so the challenges that exist in VR are also exist in AR on top of these other things. And so it becomes a massive technology challenge to get these products ready for the market. I know about half of you have tried VR devices. How many of you actually tried an AR device? Maybe half a dozen of you, right? And so the AR devices that exist today are things like Microsoft HoloLens, and there's a new Magic Leap unit that came out last year. And there are a few other smaller companies with stuff. But part of the problem is that, there's mobile AR, right? Like Pokemon Go and the new Harry Potter game and some of these IKEA apps. There's so many challenges to get a compelling AR device, especially for the consumer market, that it's at least several years away from seeing anything in the market.
And it's a hardware problem.
It's a hardware problem. It's fundamentally a hardware problem. And I think folks like these people on my right are making amazing applications and really trying to think out of the box on what can we do with VR and AR devices. But fundamentally, the hardware in AR is just not ready yet for the consumer market. Nobody wants to wear, a giant helmet on their head walking down the street. We want devices like the glasses that Norm's wearing today. Can we get a transparent display into the glasses that you're wearing today?
And you go to a lot of conferences where you chat with people working with this and you talk to people who are manufacturing. Are you optimistic, or are people working in AR hardware optimistic that this is a hurdle that can be overcome?
I do. I'm very bullish about the AR market. I'm very happy that the VR market is here, and I think a lot of the applications and the technology that's being developed today in VR does carry over to AR. I think it'll be a couple years. I think people need to be patient. I think we're going to see some good mobile AR, mobile phone-based AR experiences. You're already seeing some pretty interesting stuff today, but I think it'll be 2 or 3 years before we start seeing the first consumer wearable, mass market devices. The first stuff I think will be just okay.
And when you talk about people wanting AR glasses that look like standard glasses, there's a whole idea of whether these things can be socially integrated and accepted. And we all saw Google put out Google Glass a couple of years ago, and it didn't really go anywhere. One, because it was very expensive, but also because there was no real killer application for it that could overcome that social awkwardness of someone filming you and someone wearing it, maybe your attention being diverted. AR may take a long time to get to a place, but I think the applications for it maybe I think that can get people more comfortable with something that may not look like this yet.
I agree. I think that people are starting to finally get to a point where they're starting to understand what are some of the killer applications for AR. It's not just like getting a text message or seeing directions, right? It's about doing things on a new platform that just couldn't be done before. It's kind of like, think about some of the historical platforms that we've seen. Think about the early smartphones. We had these like HP, Windows-based computers with a start button and stylus, and it was just replicated what computers did. But it wasn't until we started seeing these iOS and Android devices that people started thinking about what are some of the new applications that I can enable with the new platform, and not just doing what we used to do. I think people are starting to finally do that. So I think when the hardware starts becoming more mature and matching some of the capabilities that these applications need, I think it's going to be really important.
And I think you mentioned, the apps that you have on the phone, both Google and Apple have invested heavily in getting developers to make those applications that you can do on your phones, because those will presumably port over or give them lessons that they can learn from the development applications for something they're wearing on their face.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the, if you look at the screen over there, that's one of a prototype that we had a couple of years ago. We're working on a display that's actually a multifocal display. These VR devices, or even AR devices today, and things, while they may be compelling, just don't look quite realistic yet. And part of that is there's so much information missing from those images, just from the hardware limitations. The resolution's not there, the color's not there, the transparency isn't there. And one of the things we're demonstrating with that prototype is the focus of the image is not there. We want images to be placed in the real world in a way that's super realistic, that if I want to put an object in my hand, it actually looks like it's in my hand. These are things that just aren't possible today.
I don't want to scare people away from the idea of AR or VR, because yes, it is going to be a little bit, there are a lot of really smart people, and there are entire communities of people who are very enthusiastic about these technologies, us all included. But what I really want to do is kind of open this up to a conversation about the things that you're excited about in VR right now. There's one thing I want you in this room to leave here with is being convinced, because it's unless you put a headset on, it's almost impossible to describe. Remember when The Matrix came out 20 years ago, and Morpheus says no one can be told what The Matrix is. You have to experience it for yourself. And of course, he told him in 5 minutes. Well, I think VR and AR is something that's even more true to that, unless you put on the headset and spend some time in it. It's really hard to, all talking about it isn't gonna help. We're gonna do our best. I'd love for you guys to share what are some of your best memories in VR, and use cases in VR, outside your own products.
If we're just going down the road, for me, I think it's actually a combination of things. I think I could talk for like 10 hours on what is cool and interesting, and just on the horizon. It's creative tools. So it's not even any of the work that we do. It's tools. When 3D artists are making amazing art on monitors today, art that ends up in Pixar films and video games, they're creating this art on a 2D monitor that gets consumed in a 2D monitor. You are tricked into thinking it's a 3D world. And creating 3D art in a 3D medium, in using a VR headset, is just absolutely incredible. It allows artists to break out of a flat canvas, just like sculptures in the real world are fully 3D, but the limitations are endless because you get to play with scale, texture, everything, anything that you can imagine. And I think there is a creative renaissance happening. The canvas itself is not actually that old. Let's say it's a couple thousand years old. 3D art is a couple decades old. I think there's a whole new medium of art just on the horizon, and it's pretty exciting to think about what kind of art, what's the Picasso of VR going to be creating? What's next for art? I think right now there's a lot of creative tools, even available on the Oculus Quest here, that allow people to do what is possible in the real world, like sculptures, 3D painting, so painting with a brush, but in full 3D space, getting to play with scale. But that's still, just like Bigscreen, doing things in VR that we can kind of do in some way already in the real world, but making more accessible. Just like how Bigscreen's bringing in movies that you already love into VR, already accessible. I'm just wondering, where would we go from here in creating art that can't actually be created in the real world?
And that even begs the question of how do you watch and experience that art? Because so much of the experience of art is a social experience as well, and so people are working on applications that create a virtual museum that artists then submit to and have room and soundscapes that are designed and tuned to, or people will have pop-up museums that then have the art that was created in VR that is printed out or put on displays, or headsets that people can put on. It really is, from our art standpoint, it's both the creation and the consumption side is really exciting.
If I can chime in my perspective, I think the most powerful thing about VR and AR is that emotional impact of experiences. The level of emotional impact you can get in a VR headset or AR headset is something you can't experience on a flat screen. To give you an example, you can play a computer game and you can be killing zombies, right, all day. But I put a VR headset on you and put one zombie in front of you, and I can count the number of seconds on one hand before you rip that headset off, right? I've seen so many people, the kind of stereotypical, like, put on a VR headset and walk down the plank. kind of experience, it's so difficult for you to step off that plank because your brain just believes that it is real. That's an experience that you cannot get in any other medium. And these are some of the most powerful experiences that I've seen, is the ones that are able to demonstrate the new emotional experiences of this medium that you simply cannot get anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's something that we see represented in the type of software. There's a lot of horror that's created for you, a lot of thrilling experiences, things that tap into that lizard part of your brain that you can't turn off, no matter how much you want to. You can't cover your eyes because it's going to be right in front of you, or the feeling of connection with other people, the social stuff. There is no Oasis yet for VR, but there are applications. There's one called VR Chat, which is kind of like, it's like what Second Life was for the early MMO days on flat screen. But you put on the headset and you jump into those portals and you, with other people, start playing a game of basketball or just chatting. And you have some really sometimes weird emergent behavior come out. And when you take your headset off, your brain recognizes it as a memory. It's not like you watched the movie or you read a book, but you remember it as if it's something you did, which is that's really powerful.
Yeah. And if I could jump in here as well, I think definitely kind of that emotional empathy part is a huge part of it. And I think probably some of my favorite experiences right now in VR are just things like Beat Saber or Super Hot, where it's like everyone wants to be a Jedi, And like when you're in those kind of experiences, you can really feel that, and it's so natural, it's so intuitive, to just really be able to live out those kind of dreams in a way that is so simple. And it really does tap into that lizard part where like you just see these things come towards you. If you've ever played Beat Saber, you see the watch come part, your natural inclination is just to strike with it. So I think that's really one of the things that's super powerful because it is so subconscious. It really kind of pulls into those kind of experiences. I would also say the other thing that excites me about VR and AR is really the potential for how democratic of a technology can really be. I mean, Ready Player One is a great example where all the VR headsets, all their schooling is done in true VR. And I think there's really the possibility where VR really does take away kind of the concept of like property in a lot of ways. It really transcends locations, it can put you in very social experiences, like a big screen. Like there are a lot of ways that I think the technology could be very useful, not just kind of beyond the content entertainment side, but really around kind of social issues, things around health, therapy, medical, all of those kind of areas that have huge implications for the technology.
And along with it being powerful as an entertainment medium, of course, a lot of fears as well. Something that's not in your headsets right now is eye tracking. Knowing the computer system, knowing where your eyes are looking at. Actually, it knows where your head's facing, which is something that data that that it needs to run the system. But eye tracking is something that will be needed as these technologies get more powerful. And so what are your guys' thoughts on the concerns of privacy and the information that you're doing on these spaces? Because I guess on the flat screen, stuff's being tracked all the time as well, but at least you have this layer of your most inner thoughts and your most subconscious things that you can do.
Well, I think maybe to educate the audience a little bit, eye tracking technologies are going to be basically little cameras in these headsets that look at where your eyes are looking. And there's a lot of reasons why you want this, right? There's some interface and software things, but there's huge hardware benefits for having eye tracking technologies. It really can save power and help with resolution if you have eye tracking. And that's why eye tracking is going to become a really fundamental technology in all headsets in the future. Some headsets have them now, but I think in the next couple of years they'll be pretty standard. But the reason why I think we are, it's a double-edged sword, right? Whenever we get these kind of new technologies, we need it because it's going to be very helpful, but it really opens up the Pandora's box of privacy problems. Like, we worry about privacy today with things that we click and things that we share. The issue with eye tracking is that when I can see where your eyes are moving, I can know what your subconscious is thinking, even though you don't want to share it, right? So for example, you could be walking through a grocery store and your eyes dart at a box of cereal, right? And suddenly Facebook knows that you like cereal and they start selling that information to somebody else, right? And it really does get dark very quickly when these devices can really not only understand what you like, they can also predict your intention with just your eye movement. And even though that's information that you may not want to share, you cannot not share that when we have eye tracking technology.
So I guess you would hope that there's transparency or the option to opt out or turn those technologies off, even though you might not get the full benefits of that technology. And I guess even outside of VR, there's a lot that companies can infer from you from things that you don't realize, and how many times you're picking up your phone, the things that you're scrolling past, how long you've been on a certain page. Like, this is all stuff that is out there now. I do want to open up for some Q&A for people that have questions about VR and AR, and yeah, I guess is that my call?
That's right, I have a loud voice. Thank you for presenting that vision of everything that you're working on. It sounds really exciting. I can't wait to get my hands on all that stuff. But now I'd like to ask you to take your CEO hats off for a moment. Thank you so much. Take your CEO hats off for a moment and put on your supervillain hats. And if you could look down, not just 5 years into the future, to some of the privacy concerns that are already coming up, but more 50 years down the future, can you share with us some of the dark fears that you have about how this technology could potentially be misused, so us writers have something to think about? Thank you.
I think one thing that's inserted into the whole experience is how prevalent AI is going to be in all this. So what this gets into, it's not just a case of like the analytics. The analytics is going to be studied by AI systems. And as such, some of these experiences are going to be very dynamic. So when we talk about 3D virtual worlds, they're going to be personalized to you. So instead of like 2D representations or a static representation, you can have a personalized, filtered 3D experience which is being controlled by an AI that knows what you like to buy, what you bought last week, and as such, you're experiencing something. Even as a social experience, you may be having a very different representation because you like Pepsi and I like Coke. Therefore, you have product placement, you have different representations, and everything is being then tracked through an AI system, which is then feeding into like any buying system, whether it's Amazon or whatever, such that by the end of the show or by the end of the experience, you're then getting presented with a card like you typically would buy this.
I mean, I think like Black Mirror has done a pretty good job of showing what down the line comes some of the worst case scenarios. And one of the episodes that really resonated with me is they have an episode where their AR just goes right into your contact lenses, but then it can change how people perceive reality, and to a point where your reality may be different than my reality because of some arbitrary thing that the software or the service that we're signed up to determined, which for me just makes me think of all the echo chambers that we're on social media now. That's under the scrolling social media page, but that gets brought into the real world and we're just even more isolated.
I think the issue is like Black Mirror. I think is surprisingly could be very realistic. Some of those scenarios. These things are 50 years away. These are like 10 to 20 years away, right? And that's kind of the scary part is these devices, like even that Oculus Quest sitting over there. Look at all the cameras that are on top of that. It's constantly 3D scanning the world, and people are working on these AR clouds and VR clouds and mapping every single part of every single indoor object and outdoor surface in the world. And there is this. You have to be kind of vigilante around like, what are you going to do with your privacy? Who owns this stuff? If I come up to your house and put a virtual graffiti on your front door, well, is that yours? Is that mine?
I think piggybacking up what you were just touching on in terms of social media, imagine in probably 10 or 20 years, not even 50, I do believe that VR is a pretty powerful communication tool. We've talked about how it has the ability to really affect you viscerally in a good way. You really feel like there's a zombie in front of you about to attack you, whatever. And if it can affect you in that way, you can also imagine VR as a tool for creators. Just like social media allows anyone to publish and broadcast their message, what would that look like in the virtual world? So the radio, the television, the internet, social media, these are ways for people to broadcast their message to affect an audience, perhaps an entire country or civilization, and maybe drag them down a violent route that the civilization doesn't want to go down. Inevitably, with any communication tool, including VR, AR, such paths are probably very likely or possible. And it's worth thinking about how do we prevent or at least monitor and think about those be influenced in a virtual world where it feels like, yeah, my best friends are there, I believe what they say, I hung out with them, in a world with them, and spent so many hours with them. It goes far beyond being on a forum, reading somebody's posts, because even that, of course, as we've seen, can easily manipulate people.
I'm going to ask a couple. So how long will it take until the VR become mainstream? So, for example, instead of TV, most of the people will use VR.
I think we all hope that it's soon. But so I mean, it definitely has, I would say, VR slowed down in the last few years. Is kind of what we've seen. I think 2016 was probably when there was the most kind of VC funding going into these kind of technologies, and it's been a little bit slower now. But I would say it's very optimistic. Like the International Data Corporation, who is a company that does these kind of research market analytics, came out with a report this year that said in 2019 the amount of VR and AR units that will be shipped is about 7.6 million, but they're projecting in 2023 that should be about 68 million devices across. So I think it's definitely one of those things where it's going to take a little bit of time, but it may not be that far off as kind of what most people are thinking. And it just kind of will be a question of, at those points, like how far is technology, how accessible is it, how cheap is it for consumers to get their hands on? And on the flip side of that, besides the hardware piece, how much content is available for people to really adopt and do that? And I think that's where you'll start to see things like social experiences really pushing a lot of that adoption.
And I think more so than the smartphone, more so than a video game console, it's by far the most intuitive piece of hardware. And we have friends who let their kids use VR, kids as young as 5 or 6, and they get it immediately, and they want to spend time on it, in Beat Saber or petting their virtual pet, and it's powerful. And the next generation growing up, it's going to be native to them, and so it is, on content creators to create a diverse, select of applications that will fit everyone, not just video gamers.
Just a quick story. I have my daughter was 4, and I put a HoloLens on her, and I put a virtual monkey playing the drums on the couch, and you'd be shocked how quickly she just accepted it and just moved on. Of course, there's a virtual monkey playing the drums on the couch. Seconds.
One of the questions asked was also, when will it replace screens and TV screens? And I actually think that's not that far away. Optimistically, there are already people using Bigscreen right now today instead of buying a TV. You can think of it as roughly about the resolution of a 720p TV, but it could be massive, the size of your wall. And for some people, it's a $400 headset that can do all of this, or a $1,000 TV in a living room that you might have space for, and you're moving every year, and it's already happening right now. But it's not a 4K HDR, et cetera, at all just yet. And that's only optimistically about 2 to 3 years away. In 2 to 3 years, that's really soon. It could feasibly replace screens for many people in many scenarios, but it's not going to happen instantly. And I think more than even analysts' numbers of how many headsets will be sold, it's also important how many of these headsets get used on a monthly basis. And once these headsets get high resolution enough, we're already relatively affordable. $400 is a good price point. Doesn't need anything else. $400. Once it also gets lightweight, has enough content, high resolution enough with all the input you need, we're almost there. So optimistically, I'd say about 2-3 years before tens of millions of people can use VR on a daily or monthly basis. Not yet to the point of smartphones where it replaces where everybody on the planet effectively has one. That's probably a lot further away. Maybe when we get to contact lenses, maybe 10, 20 years from now. But something will happen and go much more mainstream within, I think, 2 to 3 years.
When working on a VR platform like Bigscreen, what are the challenges that you think exist with regards to moderating those? Because when you have that sense of presence, like things like sexual harassment become like much more extreme. So what do you think are those challenges, and like how is it different to moderate a platform that's in VR versus just something on the web?
At least for Bigscreen, one of the interesting things that we've been doing is focusing more and more on intimate, private, smaller experiences where it's almost less interesting for a troll because the audience is just so small. So it's not quite like social media where you have such a huge audience to The other thing is also to give people capabilities that they don't have in the real world to moderate and to police and to set behavior. Like, if there's someone misbehaving in this room, it's pretty hard to get them out of the room or to be like, I don't want to talk to you. And there's a Black Mirror episode kind of like this, where I don't remember the exact storyline, but someone was blocked. And when you block that person in this augmented reality world, and you ever see them, they just appear as like a hazy blob. You can't see them, they can't talk to you, you can't talk to them, they're just effectively gone and disappear. Giving people these powerful tools allows them to self-moderate or to have their friends moderate and help them to report them. There are definitely these powerful tools that we can create and have created in Bigscreen right now today that help with this.
Thank you.
I certainly enjoy my VR headset, but when I try to convince other people to use it, the first response is that I'm going to get sick. And so I'm just wondering, is there anything going on in the industry to improve the technology to reduce motion sickness or to educate people on how to overcome it?
This motion sickness is primarily driven by a lot of the latency you see in the display. The way that our vision works is that the way that we know our position in real life is very similar to how these devices try to know our position. We have this vestibular system, these inner ear liquid in our head, and even with my eyes closed, I can turn my head and I generally know where I am, but it's not super accurate. I use my vision, my eyes, to really get correction. So I can put you in a random room, I can spin you around, you open your eyes, and you know exactly where you're at. That's how these devices work, right? But the second that these two systems don't match, like when I turn my head and I feel I'm moving, but my visual system doesn't match, my brain says there is something wrong, and it makes you feel sick, right? And so part of the problem with these devices is that it's not the real world. There's always some sort of latency or lag, right? So when the device senses that it's turning, it's trying to update the display and then send you the new image. But there's always a little bit of lag there. And so when that lag gets too large, it creates that problem of you feeling sick, right? Your brain thinks there's something wrong. And surprisingly, the problem in AR is actually much harder than VR. And generally what people try to do is they try to get what they call the motion to photon latency, or motion from my head to when the photons hit my eye of these displays. They want to be under about 20 milliseconds, right? Now, if you're a fighter jet pilot, you want to be under like 8 milliseconds. And in AR, you really want to be less than 4 milliseconds. It gets actually much harder in AR. It makes you feel different. It's not quite the same sickness there. But there's a lot of work being done in the display space to try to improve this, right? How do we get faster panels? People were moving from OLED to LCD panels. They're doing all these tricks to like flash the backlight of an LCD panel to make images look like they're frozen to help reduce those latencies. You see a big push in some of the new headsets. The new the new Valve Index is running at 144 hertz, right? Running the displays faster can really reduce that latency. But it's a problem that's gotten a lot better over the last few years. If you tried an Oculus DevKit or DK1, DK2, it used to be really, really bad. And now I think it's probably good for, if I were just to guess, maybe 80% of people probably don't have any problems. But it's going to continue to get better. That's not something that I'm super worried about.
I do think it's also education, and also because there are so many people working on so many different technologies that there's no standard, right? Like everyone, some people will make a headset that runs at 80 hertz because that's acceptable for a lot of people, but then your friends might not feel comfortable in that. There's no set standard for regulating that or for agreeing on that. And sometimes the hardware makers make trade-offs, whether it's the high resolution or the higher frame rate, and people pick and choose. But I think it's education, and also there's ergonomics. That everyone wants to make sure it's not too front heavy, and like that's what people are working toward it.
There's different types of sickness. There's the motion sickness thing. The other thing I would suggest to you is, especially in these VR headsets, is don't get too close to objects, because these displays can't change the focus of that object. So if you see an object up close and the focus is wrong, it's going to make you sick as well. So try to stay, a meter or two away from things will also help you feel better.
Just a real quick thing is also on the content. Don't demo virtual roller coasters. Oftentimes, for some reason, that's the first thing people want to try, and that's the one that's just like the real world, most likely going to make you sick. A lot of the causes of motion sickness also end up being when you perceive virtual motion, specifically virtual acceleration, and not constant velocity, constant movement. And when the app, the game, is trying to make you think that you are about to shoot off into space, when your body, the physical body, has all these systems, as you were just saying, to tell you whether you're accelerating or not, there's a mismatch. And that's when you start to feel sick. Your body's starting to think I'm being poisoned because I'm seeing this acceleration, but I'm not feeling it, so what's going on? And that's very similar to the motion sickness you might get in a car or even on a boat. If you're feeling it, but you don't see it, or vice versa, if you see it but don't feel it. So I'd really recommend not demoing anything that has a lot of acceleration, like a roller coaster. And to remind people that the headsets they might have heard of or might have tried before, many of them just didn't have the capabilities that modern headsets that just came out this year have. One basic thing is the ability to just move forward and backwards, positional tracking. Most of the headsets back in the day just did not have that capability at all, which means that if you just move an inch, like your brain can tell, like I'm moving a little bit forward, but my vision isn't actually moving that forward at all. There is some mismatch, and again, that causes headaches, discomfort, nausea. The newest headsets don't have those issues.
I think we're just about out of time. Hang out for a little bit. We'll ask a couple of questions. I want to thank everyone here for joining on this panel. Give a round of applause.